Thanks for tuning in to Vitality and Motion. Let this be a place to grow your mindset and prioritize movement. All audio is original with music and production support from Riverside as my editing platform. This podcast is for education and inspiration only, and any studies or products I mention are simply for context. Take what fits in your life and check in with your healthcare medical providers as you feel is necessary. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Vitality and Motion. Today I wanted to chat a little bit about some of my favorite products I've swapped out over the past few years to limit the amount of toxins I encounter in my everyday life. Now obviously I know we aren't going to completely limit all of these toxins, but I feel like if we have the opportunity to do so, we should take any chance to limit them. And as y'all know, I love to do a little deep dive on stuff so we can all understand it better. And specifically, I wanted to discuss what are known as PFAS, or per and polyfluoroalkyl substances. I definitely had to put that into Google Translate to make sure I said that correctly. Anyway, what are PFAS? They are literally everywhere. They are used to keep food from sticking to packages. They're used to make clothes. They're even in things like floss and our makeup, which honestly was a huge shock for me, and so much more. You may have heard people refer to these as quote unquote forever chemicals because basically they don't break down as easily. And over time, if we're exposed to them, as most of us are, they're living in our bodies and slowly just kind of killing us over time. And since there are so many different types and variants in these chemicals, they're kind of hard to study. But some of the common conclusions I found in the research is that it could be affecting things like your metabolism, increase your risk for certain types of cancers, and reduce your immune system, which I assume most of us are probably not surprised by those stats. But on a more positive note, it does seem like there is movement to banning these PFAS chemicals, especially driven mostly by state governments, in things like cosmetics, food packaging, and it looks like specifically in Maine, California, Minnesota, and New York. So hopefully that movement continues. And I did see that there is some research suggesting that an increase in your fiber may decrease your risk as well. So again, fiber is just a great way to keep your bowels moving, and I personally love snacking on almonds because I feel like it helps to keep me consistent. But anyways, I think it's important to protect ourselves now as much as we can instead of later when it may be too late or we do get that unwanted diagnosis. And it's just mind-boggling to me, the people that are super healthy, do all the right things, but still end up with these unwanted diagnoses. And it just makes me think, like, what is the root cause? I know personally for me, like, my family has a history of certain cancers, like pancreatic cancer, breast cancer, and even colon cancer. So I think it's just even more important now to understand that. And if I could prevent that in some way, like, it just makes me feel better to understand what I'm using on a daily basis, understand the label, understand what the ingredients actually are, so I can limit not only what I'm putting on my body, but what's in my environment as well. And I know these changes can be really overwhelming, but that's anything in life, right? Any change is scary. As I always say, do your research and figure out what makes sense for you, what's going to fit best in your life, what you can afford, and maybe you pick 1 to 2 things from my list today and make a change and see what happens. And I also wanted to add that more than likely there's going to be an argument or research for anything that you Google, and as I've started this podcast, I have definitely seen this as a common theme that literally anybody can take an article and just blow up the research when in reality that may be the only study supporting that claim. So I like to look for common themes and come to my own conclusions. Ultimately, they teach us in school that meta-analysis paired with a systematic review is the golden standard for research, and I think it's important to help form your own opinion too. So that's why I kind of encourage you guys to look up your own stuff outside, especially of social media, to form a true opinion before diving into something or making a drastic change or decision on something just because someone told you it was good or bad. Even for me, I think this has just been a very humbling experience to help to grow my knowledge, and I want to try to relay that information as best I can for you guys. Anyway, I feel like I'm rambling, but yeah, thanks for coming to my TED Talk regarding research. So going back to this whole podcast and what it's about, do what makes you feel good and just diversify your sources, please. Don't just watch one video or go to one site and assume this is what I need. They're telling me it's correct, so it is correct. That's all I'm saying. Anyway, let's reroute. So yeah. I personally find peace of mind knowing the products I use are for the most part cleaner than most mainstream products found in the grocery store. And unfortunately, we aren't even in the top 20 for the healthiest countries in the world, which is just so sad to me. And our top 4 causes of death, also known as the 4 horsemen's diseases, are cardiovascular disease or heart diseases, diabetes, cancer, and Alzheimer's, with a common theme of inflammation. Now, let's do a little sidebar regarding inflammation. There are 5 classic signs of inflammation, more specifically when you think of like an acute or a short-term injury. Those are redness, heat or warmth to a certain area, swelling, pain, and loss of function. Those are okay. We need those signs of inflammation for correct body healing. But when it becomes chronic, that's when it's more of an issue. Some of the chronic symptoms that you may notice or may go unnoticed could be an excessive amount of bloating. Maybe you have abdominal pain or irregular bowels. Maybe you have acid reflux or food sensitivities, fatigue after walking, brain fog, joint muscle or aches, a weakened immunity where you feel like you're getting sick often, and maybe some environmental inflammation could be if you feel like you have a chronic cough, chronic sneeze, constantly getting headaches, maybe you have rashes or hives, or you have like, redness on your skin. Sometimes you have to dig for these answers and really advocate for yourself, because people may tell you that you're fine, but in reality, maybe you're not fine. And sometimes changing up certain products can make a huge difference in your life, and you don't even realize it until you switch and you're like, oh wow, I don't have those red bumps anymore. Like, that's crazy, just from changing my soap or whatever it might be. So again, just trying to highlight why I find all of this stuff so important and so interesting. And lastly, I just wanted to finish up with sharing some product swaps that I love. Hopefully eventually I'll have some affiliate links for you guys with some discount codes, so definitely trying to manifest that. But in the meantime, I'll just give you all the list, make sure it's all posted in the show notes for y'all, and specifically focusing on products in the kitchen, in the bathroom, the laundry room, and then the bedroom that are overall free from microplastics and a decrease in toxicity. So when I say toxicity, I just mean any extra unnecessary chemicals like we discussed earlier, the PFAS, fragrance, heavy metals, perfume, parabens, pesticides, all that. And I have a bone to pick with fragrance because it's really hard to avoid. And sometimes you just have to pick your battles, but I do try to limit fragrance as much as possible because that term is essentially an umbrella term for various chemicals they could put into the product. So I personally love when brands list out each ingredient, what it means, or have certifications like cruelty-free. You can also use apps like Yucca, or maybe it's Yucca, I'm not exactly sure how that's pronounced, or EWG Healthy Living. Those are both great apps where basically you just scan the barcode on the back of the item, it gives you a rating, it breaks down the ingredient list, and it's just a great tool to utilize if you're unsure whether or not to buy a product in the store. You can just do a quick scan. I do it all the time. Even at the house, my mom will buy stuff and be like, scan this, and then we find out that it's actually not as healthy as it's claiming to be. Sometimes with terms like natural, it may not be as natural as they're claiming, so unfortunately these brands sometimes do us a little dirty with the wording or their marketing, which honestly is very frustrating as the consumer. But anyways, that's a whole other discussion. Another site that I came across is called Skin Safe Products. Very similar idea, and I will link all of those in the show notes. So now let's dive into these different products that I have swapped out over the past few years. I think I'm going to do a bit of a rapid fire and just kind of list them all out. So if you want any more information, or you want me to do a deep dive on any certain products you would like to learn more about, just feel free to message me and I'll be happy to do so. Alright, so let's go ahead and start in the kitchen. And actually, one of the first swaps that I made was getting rid of all my plastic cookware utensils because, again, they're just filled with those forever chemicals, and it's just not a good combo if you're cooking with hot food and using a plastic device. So I like to use the silicone cooking utensils. I think they're easy to clean. You could throw them in the dishwasher. Some people even like the wooden cookware set, so whatever your preference is, I would just try to avoid plastic if you can. And then for pots and pans, I do love my ceramic coated ninja set that my mom got me. I think they've held up really well. She likes to use the brand Caraway, which I think is definitely worth the investment, but they're just a little pricier and also hold up really well. Some other options is just stainless steel or cast iron pans. Those are all great. And then for baking sheets, I like the brand Green Pan. For cutting boards, I like any kind of wooden cutting boards. Some people even like to use glass cutting boards. For dishwasher pods, I like the brand Molly Suds. And then recently my mom introduced me to this brand called Truly Free dishwasher detergent. It is a powder, but not as intimidating as you may think. You just scoop it up and put it in the same spot that you would put the pot in, and then run the dishwasher as normal. And honestly, I think it cleans the dishes so much better. Like, I've pulled out my silverware and I'm like, wow, these are like really shiny. So if you do try it, let me know. And then the last thing I would consider switching out is all of your plastic containers for glassware containers. Again, just trying to avoid those forever chemicals any way you can on a daily basis. All right, let's dive into some of the products I like to use in the bathroom. And I wanted to start by discussing one of my all-time favorite brands that I found through this journey called Primarily Pure. They have such a range of products now, which I love, and they're coming out with even more, and I feel like I've pretty much tried it all. But if you're looking for a good place to start, I do love their deodorant. It's non-toxic and aluminum free. I feel like I tried so many different non-toxic or aluminum free deodorants, and this was the only one I felt like really did the job. But it does take a while for your body to adjust to a natural deodorant, so I think this would be a good episode for me to kind of dive into a little further if you're interested. And then recently, my mom and I discovered this brand called OneSkin, and what I love about them is they're a heavily researched brand. They've looked at over 900 plus peptides to essentially reverse the skin's biological age. I just started using it, but honestly, I've already noticed a difference. My mom loves it. She's been using it for a while now, so definitely check that brand out. And then for shampoo and conditioner, I like the brand Kitcha. They have a lot of other random products out now, which is awesome. The only thing about Kitcha, though, that I should warn you is that their shampoo and conditioner is in like a bar soap form. So it's definitely a little unique, but don't knock it till you try it. And then for my floss, toothpaste, and mouthwash, I like the brand Risewell. For dry shampoo, I like the brand Divi. For hand soap, I like Myers. And then for the most part, I have tried to swap out most of my cleaning products. One of the brands that I love is called Branch Basics. You can buy a kit online that comes with reusable spray bottles. Then you would just buy the concentrate when you run out. But you can literally use it for anything. You can use it for laundry detergent, hand soap, cleaning spray. And then I also like to utilize 1 part water, 1 part vinegar as well. So those are definitely some alternatives if you're looking for some cleaner options. And then for laundry detergent, I like the brand Molly Suds. And then for the bedroom, I kept it pretty brief. I mostly just wanted to touch on candles. So I try to avoid any super heavy fragrance candles, and instead I'll use a soy based or beeswax or even coconut based candles. And then I also like to use my diffuser with essential oils. They just have multiple various benefits and relaxation. It's definitely more of a holistic approach, which I like. And it's also very nostalgic for me because my nanny, or we call her nanny, but she's my grandma, has been using these forever. So I just love the feeling it brings me. So shout out to my nan if she's listening to this. And then to kind of wrap things up, like I said before, any kind of change is overwhelming. So I suggest starting with maybe 1 to 2 things that you think are worth it or affordable at this time, and then just kind of slowly start switching stuff out. And yeah, if there's any products you would like me to explain more or do a deeper dive on, I'm more than happy to. Feel free to message me. And thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great rest of your day.